So Jerry Falwell Jr., Liberty University, again in the news. And Jerry Falwell has been challenged to a open debate about some major issues of cultural divide. Here's the background. Reverend Jonathan Martin came on the Liberty campus and was going to have a meeting basically protesting some of the stands of Liberty vis-a-vis President Trump and other things. He was forcefully removed from the campus. And as a result of that, Reverend William Barber, who is president of Repairers of the Breach, he's a pastor, he's a distinguished professor at Union Theological Seminary, a man I've tried to reach out to a number of times without any success of ever getting any return contact whatsoever. He's a regular on MSNBC's show with Joy Reid, and he is appearing with her, and this is a moral moment. That's the description of this segment. Listen to what Reverend Barber had to say.
It's a threat to the gospel because it's not the gospel. Falwell, joining others like Franklin Graham and Jeffers and Tony Perkins, have actually said Trump is the dream president, even though his policies are a nightmare to the very people the gospel lift up that we should be concerned about as a nation, the poor, the sick. It's contrary to the gospel. And Falwell and others know that they really can't stand the critique. In fact, recently Falwell was reported as teaming up with Steve Bannon, the white nationalist, to so-called expose fake Republicans. Well, white evangelicalism, not evangelicalism, because I'm an evangelical, and I tell people I'm a conservative, theologically liberal evangelical. We have to take away those terms. But he's trying to connect this, try to connect the gospel to white nationalism is as old as the slave master's religion that promoted slavery. This is like the slave master's religion in the 21st century.
Reverend Barber, I'm reaching out to you again, sir. What you say is largely off base, terribly inflammatory, and in many ways absolutely contrary to the gospel of Jesus, terribly divisive and destructive. Now, I'm not here to defend President Trump. I'm not here to defend Jerry Falwell or Tony Perkins or Robert Jeffers or Franklin Graham. They're all big men and they can stand for themselves. I frequently am grieved over actions and words of President Trump. I frequently pray that God would help him to be a more presidential president and unify the nation. I often grieve over things he says that I feel are destructive and divisive and bring down our general culture in America. At the same time, I believe that God is using him in many positive ways, that his strong pro-life stance is from the Lord, that his standing for religious liberties is from the Lord, and that candidly, I don't think that Barack Obama was out to hurt poor Americans any more than Donald Trump is out to hurt poor Americans. They both have different philosophies as to what health care and things like that are best for all Americans. What I find highly offensive, sir, is you are connecting the gospel basically with the Democratic Party. You are connecting the gospel with the party of abortion. And you are not an evangelical. You can say you are. But if you do not stand up for the life of the unborn, sir, you are not an evangelical. You are not an evangelical if you affirm same-sex, quote, marriage, which is fundamentally contrary to the word. You can say you're evangelical, but you're not. Those things are fundamentally wrong and fundamentals that we must stand for together. The sanctity of life, the meaning of marriage, these are not just negotiable peripherals. Yes, there are issues with our president. Yes, some people blindly follow him. I don't know many in terms of major leaders, but some do. And some, just like they would not take any critique of President Obama, they won't take any critique of President Trump. That happens all the times along political lines. And I'd be interested to know, Reverend Barber, how often you were an outspoken critic of President Obama, how often you chided him on his abortion policies, how often you chided him on changing his views or changing his public views about marriage, and other things that he said in terms of identity politics that were divisive and destructive. If we are to be a truly prophetic people, then our allegiance is not Democratic, Republican, liberal, or conservative. Our allegiance is to Jesus. But again, the inflammatory nature of your rhetoric to call Steve Bannon a white nationalist, again, is to misrepresent things. And I'm not a defender of Steve Bannon. In your open letter, you and others have an open letter to Liberty University to engage in peaceful debate. If I were Liberty University, I would embrace that in a heartbeat. If I were Jerry Falwell, I'd say, please do it. And I'm reaching out to you, sir. Yes, I have the stature and platform to have a proper debate with you. Let's do it. Let's find a right setting. You're in North Carolina. Right now, I'm in North Carolina. We can find many appropriate settings. I'm sure we could get media to cover it. Let's have a debate, not about President Trump, not about Democrat versus Republican, but rather the gospel. What is the gospel and how is it lived out in culture? And what policies are more in keeping with the gospel? I invite you to that. And you have an organization called Repairers of the Breach. Everything I've ever heard from you, sir, is extraordinarily divisive, extraordinarily partisan, extraordinarily political, and more leftist liberation theology than the gospel of Jesus. You say, we write this open letter in hope that you'll be true to the promise of your public statement. You're writing to Jerry Falwell about why Reverend Martin was removed this week, and in greater hope that America might experience a moral revival as we face the truth about how the gospel has been compromised and receive the good news that another way is possible. Sir, I'm all for those goals. Let's put liberty, let's put Jerry Falwell aside. I'm all for those goals, but I believe you are on the wrong side of some of the biggest, most important issues today. And you might speak out against President Trump every single day. That's not my issue. And you may never vote Republican. That's not my issue. But, sir, I believe your theology and your rhetoric is destructive, divisive, harmful, and is not helping to bridge the racial gap, and is not helping to address real social justice issues where they remain, and real racism where it is found in America. I believe you're stirring the racist pot in your rhetoric and doing more harm than good. And I say that as a minister of the gospel of Jesus.